Here's the part that a lot of people don't talk about. The language we use internally with ourselves can activate threat or safety circuitry. So if we beat ourselves up, we're like, why did I do that? Like, damn it, like, why did I do that? I always do this. Why do I keep doing this? If we berate ourselves and criticize ourselves, it activates cues of threat. Versus if we say, oh, I'm feeling anxious right now. I'm noticing this. First, I'm going to take a breath. This is a really overwhelming day. I'm going to take a breath and then decide what to do. Or we say to ourselves, like, oh, you're handling so much right now, right? And we use this like nurturing voice and we provide comfort and care to ourselves. We're activating cues of safety.
Welcome to Oxygen for Educators. I'm one of your hosts, Michelle Kinder, and you'll meet Chris Kent Phelps in just a bit. It's our hope to bring you thought-provoking, unscripted conversations full of actionable ideas to fuel your important work in the world. Thanks for tuning in. This space is for you.
Hey, Chris. Hi, Michelle Kinder. How are you today?
Today's the day everyone gets to hear from Tina Payne Bryson, who we wanted from the get of starting this podcast. So here she is. I'm so excited.
I'm so excited too. And I have to tell you that watching this interview, I was just watching this like mental volley go back and forth between these two brilliant, fascinating women who are so like entrenched in this content. It was so fun to watch. And I feel very much like an imposter showing up to be on this podcast with y'all.
Quite the contrary. You're right up in there with us.
Oh, but I'm not. I learned that watching this one.
I'm glad you said that though about Tina, because that to me is a defining characteristic of her. She's just got this huge brain, an insatiable curiosity, and then a really unmatched ability to then communicate what she knows from those deep, deep spaces in a way that like totally lands. I don't like her storytelling, I don't know, she's just so good.
And it gives very practical advice to someone who is not so entrenched in the content. Like, I really feel like she should bill me for the time I spent watching the podcast interview, because I learned so much. And like preparing, I literally highlighted the whole entire transcript, and then I went, okay, I just got to show up and talk because I just learned so much. It was really amazing. I'm so glad that you brought her into my life.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, give everyone her bio, and then we'll get to hear from her, and I'm sure she would be delighted to invoice you.
I thought you were going to say that. Well, I will read her bio. One thing that stuck out to me just watching the interview that was not in her bio, but I think it's important to mention just for our listeners, is that she is a peer. She is an educator, and she started in education. I did not know that until you asked her to tell her story. So to know that she started as a high school English teacher, well, really, she started at 7 teaching others. That was just a really kind of beautiful addition to her story. So Dr. Tina Payne Bryson is the author of several groundbreaking parenting books that I wish I would have had when my kids were younger. 2 of those were New York Times bestsellers, The Whole Brain Child, which has sold over 2 million copies, and No Drama Discipline. Both were co-authored with Dr. Dan Siegel, and translated into over 60 languages. Amazing. They also wrote together The Yes Brain, The Power of Showing Up, and Dr. Bryson is also the author of The Bottom Line for Baby. And she has a new book, The Way of Play, which I'm very excited to order that one, I have to say. Collectively, her books have sold over 4 million copies worldwide. In addition, she is the founder and executive director of the Center for Connection, a multidisciplinary mental health practice based in Southern California. She's a sought-after keynote speaker, and that's how you met her, correctly? You hired her years ago at Momentous Institute, and were blown away.
Yes.
She's also a consultant with schools, businesses, and organizations, including the Nike Sport Research Lab, which is so cool. And what she says in her bio is that the most important part is that she is the mother of 3 boys, which I loved that she called that out. You can visit her at tinabryson.com. One thing that I thought was interesting in your interview, she said her life's work is about helping us to see and respond to behaviors in better ways with the brain. That was a really succinct way to describe what her gift is. And I know she did that for me in the hour that you guys were together. So let's introduce Dr. Tina Payne Bryson to our listeners.
Hi, Tina.
Hi, I'm so glad to see you and talk with you.
You were at the top of my list when we started this podcast in 2024, and today's the day. So I'm like, I'm kind of levitating in my chair a little bit.
Oh, it's always so fun to connect with you. We have always been so like-minded, and you're just one of my very favorite people. So this isn't work. This is just like a highlight of my week.
Double back. I feel the same way. Well, we like to start asking people to tell their story, and I know how at the heart of your work is caring for educators, but I would love for people to understand why.
Yeah. Well, when I was probably 7 or 8, I started putting on little summer activities for my neighbor kids that were younger than me. And I kind of did that a lot in childhood. I was always kind of like a born teacher. I loved it. And when I was 19 and trying to figure out what to do with my life, I decided on a mission trip that I knew I needed to invest my life in people. And to me, that meant becoming a teacher. So my degree is from Baylor University, and I started out as a high school English teacher. I had a high school English teacher that was also my speech and debate person. And now, I speak for a living, and she is still someone I stay in touch with. And she changed my life, and I loved ideas and books and kids, and so it was a natural fit. So I started out as a high school English teacher, got married, and my husband was in grad school, and I was substitute teaching in rural Kentucky, and then decided I should get a master's degree because we were poor and he was studying all the time anyway, and decided to kind of go into social work, which is kind of an interesting turn. And really, as I started to understand more about people, and I heard Bruce Perry speak one time and started reading his books, and I was like, what is this brain? This is really interesting. And so I'm a nerd, Michelle, kind of like you are. I'm a curious learner. And then I eventually went on to get a PhD in social work, but with a focus in the field of interpersonal neurobiology. I heard Dan Siegel speak when I was in grad school. And I was really the kind of person that wanted to understand mechanism. I really wanted to understand, like, you can say, like, this helps educators more than this. Okay, great, but why? What is the thing that changes it? And as I started to study the brain and the mind and relationships, like the science of attachment and what happens in the nervous system and how does our brain wire and all these things, all of it started coming together. And I was like, parents and educators and mental health professionals all need to learn this. So eventually I became a licensed clinical social worker, and I have done therapy with kids and teens for many years. But I have always been in schools. So for 15 years now, I've been the consulting school counselor and brain-based learning specialist at a little school in Altadena, California. And I will always be in schools in some way. So my heart is as an educator, and even when I'm at conferences and I'm speaking to mental health professionals, or I'm leading my team at the Center for Connection, which is an interdisciplinary mental health practice, my main roles in those spaces are to teach interpersonal neurobiology. And I think there is so much that the brain and this field of interpersonal neurobiology, lots of different fields of science, can give us to understand kids and understand ourselves and our relationships, that changes everything. And so my life's work, whether it's in specific, education spaces or in other spaces, is really about helping us see and respond to behaviors in better ways with the brain in mind.
And you're so good at it. Your capacity to translate complex neuroscience into sticky, actionable strategies is, to me, unmatched. The
Thank
the
you.
multiple times we've had you come out and speak, it's your ideas in your voice that I would hear in classrooms and in therapy offices months and years after you were with us for 1 hour.
Thank you. Thank you. I love doing it, and I think I kinda get like, I build attachments to people and places, and I got so attached to you and Momentous, and so I've loved kind of staying in touch, with that group, and I think that one of the reasons the ideas are so sticky is because they are powerful, and they really change how we understand ourselves and regulate ourselves and how we see and respond to kids' behaviors too. And I think we are still so outdated in most education settings. Still, I think heavily influenced by the behaviorism movement in the 50s that was largely based on animal research, where we didn't understand how the nervous system worked like we do now. And I think so many of the assumptions we make as educators that are wrong is what leads to a lot of suffering for
Mm.
us and frustrations where we're batting our heads against the wall over and over and over with some challenging behaviors, and really where we're doing harm to kids even when we're trying to help. So I have this really passionate drive to keep communicating these ideas so that I think, Dan Siegel, my co-author, um, has been such an incredible influence in my life, and he and I get to continue to teach together, and it's just such a joy. Um, he has this great phrase that is, "Without awareness, we don't have a
Mhm.
choice." Once we have awareness, we begin to have a choice, and I think that's so much of what I think educators respond to is that when they start learning these things, that helps them start having choices about themselves and about how to handle and navigate tricky things. And I think educators are so underappreciated and under-resourced, that if we can resource people even in their own minds in terms of things they can do to regulate themselves and ways to be more effective, so that their passion can return when they're feeling really overstretched. That's a really good thing to do. That's a win for generations, I think.
Mm. When you think about this time that we're living in, which I think is just marked by dysregulation at every level, what are the concepts or tools that are most sticky for people right now?
Yeah. I want to start with kind of an idea before we get to the practical, and that is, the school where I have worked for 15 years, St. Mark's Episcopal School, is one of the schools that burned in the fires that we had here in Southern California, which is where I am. And so, we've been walking together through this massive loss.
Yeah.
And so I've been talking about this a lot with them, but it's actually something I've been talking about for decades. If a school calls me, I do a lot of consulting at a lot of schools. If a school calls me and they're like, "Oh my gosh, Tina, we have a group of parents that are totally freaking out. We've had this thing happen and now the board is freaking out. Like, what do we do?" It's the same answer I'm going to give right now, and that is cues of safety.
Mm.
So if we think about the idea of cues of safety versus cues of threat, this is such an important thing to think about. So we are meaning makers for each other. And so if I start, you know, getting really freaked out and upset right now, you're going to start worrying too,
Mhm.
right? And so there are verbal cues, there are nonverbal cues, there are environmental cues, there are internal cues, bodily cues. So if we are in spaces where there are a lot of cues of threat, our nervous systems can't help but have a threat
Mhm.
response. And a threat response can look physiological, right? Like, so our muscles tense up, our breathing increases, our blood pressure increases, our body temperature increases, and our emotions get activated too. Like, we start feeling panic or mild anxiety, or sometimes like frustration and anger that comes with being feeling like we're being put in these positions. So if we're in spaces where there are cues of threat that are coming externally or that are coming from our own thoughts and our own, physiology, that just keeps going in loops. So we know that what we give attention to, or what continues, fires and wires, and states over time, can become even traits, versus the idea of cues of safety that we can provide ourselves. And we can talk really specifically about how we can do that even when we're in spaces that provide cues of threat. But we can create cues of safety in our environment and in the ways that we interact with each other, in our relationships, non-verbally, all of these things. So when I'm thinking about what is most sticky, I think the concept of cues of safety, how can I, as an educator, create cues of safety in my environment in which I have control over, right? And then how can I create cues of safety within myself? And then how can I provide those then to my students, to my colleagues, to parents, even to sometimes to my admin, or if you're an administrator, how do you do that for your teams and the people you're leading? So a couple of things, and you were so brilliant at this. All of this that I'm talking about. You were so intentional about creating these kinds of spaces, including one I can mention now from the Momentous Institute that you made happen. Was kids had pictures of an attachment figure from home in the classrooms. Like, kids had pictures of their family members or their pets that were visible in the classroom. That's a beautiful cue of safety, right? So that's just something like that. Humor and laughter and silliness is a huge cue of safety. So if there's something funny that makes you laugh, like after the fires and all this stuff, there was so much chaos. Many people on my team, some of them lost their homes. It's a rough time. And my book, The Way of Play, had just come out, and I was not feeling playful. But I bought some sticky stickers that are googly eyes, and I put them all over my house. So like my Nespresso maker, I stuck the googly eyes on there. So when you open it to put the new pod in, it's like the mouth opens and the eyes are googly.
I love it.
So like that makes me laugh. That's a cue of safety, because if you think about it, like if a predator is chasing you, you're not laughing about something. Right. You're not being silly. You're not doing these things. You're also not singing or dancing or listening to music. So we have to remember that the brain is this huge neural network, and it's a big association machine. So like typically when we're listening to music and we're singing, we're having a good time, we're relaxed, we're enjoying ourselves, not to mention the vibrations that are happening in our vocal cords that also activate a lot of regulation in our bodies. So that's a physiological cue of safety as well. But when we create these experiences that are connected to safety and relaxation and all of these things, we can do that. So in our environments, we can think about those things. But then internally, there are things we can do to provide cues of safety to ourselves. One is what Huberman has made popular on his podcast, but we've known about it since the 1930s, and I've been teaching it for decades. One of the quickest things we know to calm and regulate the nervous system is called the physiological sigh. And the most important part of it is that our exhale is longer than our inhale. And so basically it's like breathing in for a count of 5 and then breathing out for a count of 7 and doing it, 1, 2, 3 times. I like to do it with a hand on my chest and a hand on my belly, and just and if we just do that a couple of times, it is just incredible. And especially the more you do it, the more it becomes associated with this relaxation. So the way we breathe, the way we move.
Just that one time and doing it together, like I felt a shift. Yeah, so powerful.
I actually just read a study this week that said that people who had cardiac risk, who were breathing in for like a count of 4, holding their breath for 2, and then breathing out for 7 or 8, and they had them do it a few times a day over months, had actually better cardiac function.
Holy cow.
And I'm sure it's related to stress regulation, So, and we can teach our students this. We can start staff meetings with this. The other thing that isn't really talked about very much that I think is really, really powerful is language. Obviously, language we use with others. Like during COVID, I was teaching educators and parents to say, instead of saying, wash your hands, there's a lot of germs, we don't want you to get sick. We would say, wash your hands. We want everyone to stay healthy. Okay, it's still the same. It's still the same request. It's still the same boundary. But the language gives cues of safety, like we're watching out for health. I'm in charge of watching out, so
Mhm.
you can be rest in me. But it gives cues of safety, health versus cues of threat, sick.
Yeah.
So the language we use matters. But here's the part that a lot of people don't talk about: the language we use internally with ourselves can activate threat or safety circuitry. So if we beat ourselves up, we're like, why did I do that? Like, damn it, like, why did I do that? I always do this. Why do I keep doing this? If we berate ourselves and criticize ourselves, it activates cues of threat.
Mhm.
Versus if we say, oh, I'm feeling anxious right now. I'm noticing this. First, I'm going to take a breath. This is a really overwhelming day. I'm going to take a breath and then decide what to do.
Mm.
Or we say to ourselves, like, oh, you're handling so much
Mm.
right now. Right. And we use this like nurturing voice and we provide comfort and care to ourselves. We're activating cues of safety. So it's, that's like our internal dialogue too. So, the way we breathe, the way we move, if you walk around rushing and talking really fast, you're going to activate more states of arousal. If you slow down your pace of voice and your pace of movement, and you put your body in a relaxed posture. These are all things, in addition to our environment and the way we talk to ourselves, that can really keep giving us reps during the day that settle our nervous system or dial us
Mm.
up in ways that are unhelpful.
Mm. And just noting the era we are in, an era of dysregulation, an era of fear-mongering, like, the signals of chaos and danger are so intense right now, and they're unlikely to stop because they result in
Yep.
money for people. So what I hope people are hearing as they listen to you is we aren't in a time where you can leave it to chance. If you leave it to chance, you will be dysregulated. You have to actively step into this science of cues of safety, cues of
Yeah.
regulation. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Love that. I love the way you just said that. We really can be intentional about this. As a mom, I have 3 boys and because I'm a child therapist and because I've been in schools, like I know how hard it is for kids to get through the day, right? And we we often get the brunt of that. I talk about how like my really sweet children, like at the end of the day, they would get in my car. They were often like verbally abusive, like emotionally abusive. You're like, "Hi, sweetie, I'm so glad to see you." And they're so mean. They
Their
can be
heads
so
would spin
mean.
around.
Yeah, because they're safe with us, so
Yeah.
they fall apart with us. They know they can't lose our love. So I remember at one point, like, first of all, mornings were really stressful, and I remember one morning I dropped my kid off elementary school, and he it was so like I have permission to share this story. He was like, as I was like, "Bye, honey, have a good day." We had a really stressful morning, and he was like, "I hope something really bad happens to you, so you're not the one that picks me up today." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, like, what in
Shots
the world?" And
fired.
I remember, like, in that moment, I was kinda mad. I was like, "Bye, have a good day, like, get the hell out of my car." Like, I didn't say that out
Right,
loud. It was
right,
just my
right.
internal dialogue. But as I drove away, I started feeling really sad, and I started feeling like, "Ugh, I don't wanna have mornings like that. Like, I'm sending them out into the world. What can I do in the mornings to be intentional about creating cues of safety?" And I did 2 things that changed everything. I slowed down my pace of talking and my movements.
Yeah.
And then I felt a lot less stressed, and we put music on in the mornings, and I had my kids make morning playlists, and just those 2 shifts made a huge difference. Now, at the end of the day then, I started saying, "Okay, if I think about kids, mine and others, if you think about them," this is kind of an image from our book, The Power of Showing Up, that they're like little sailboats out on the seas, and sometimes their days are really stormy, and they feel motion sick, and they're, like, tossed about by playground politics and all of these things, and all the, fear-mongering messaging that kids are bringing and sharing to schools. Um, that I wanted the moment they got in my car or the moment they came home, I wanted to, like, think about my car and our home as harbors from the
Mm.
storm. That once they got into the car, once they walked into our house, they went, "Oh, thank God. now I can rest, I can be, my nervous system can go back to equanimity. So when I think about that for ourselves, like for us, when at the end of a day of being at school, you get into your car, your kids may be with you, you may be having other people's kids in the car, whatever. But if you have like your favorite chapstick, or you
Mhm.
have like a piece of gum you love, and you have music that you know, enjoy, like you get into your car, you close your door, and the minute you hear that door close, take that physiological
Mm.
sigh and just be like, now it's time to transition to the next thing. Put a fun little picture in your car, and I know Texas heat, or where if you're in the South, like don't put the chapstick in there because that'll be a cue of danger when you get in there, melted everywhere. But I think, how can you make your
Mhm.
car feel good, which means maybe don't have a million napkins spilling out everywhere.
Mhm.
Maybe take some time to think about, like, how can I create a space that doesn't give me more visual chaos? And same thing with at least, some piece of your home
Mhm.
or some place that you go. Maybe there's a bathroom you can go into that you just make sure that bathroom makes you happy.
Mm.
There's a picture in there, there's a smell in there that you love, like orange blossom or whatever it is. We can be really intentional. And I think what we see visual, like think about our sensory system. What do you smell? What do you see? What do you taste? What do there is like drinking a favorite beverage. Oh, having a warm mug with your favorite tea. Or, like a cozy blanket. I put my pajamas on the minute it's not embarrassing to, even if I have people
So
coming
you
over,
mean
it might be at 3
4 p.m.,
o'clock.
right?
If I can. And actually, we have some friends that live like within walking distance, and we've started like getting together for dinners and stuff. And I'm like, I'm just coming over in my pajamas, and they're like, great.
How miss you
So
are.
it's a little bit maybe slipping away from me, Michelle. I don't know. It might be a little too much, but yes, being intentional about creating cues of safety for you. What makes you smile? What makes you laugh? What brings you micro moments of joy and delight? Um,
Mm.
Putting even your screensaver, like I've got Bluebell, my little fluffy Yeti, as my thing on my, and she's a huge cue of like regulation for me. So she's on my thing anytime I pick up my phone, I get it. Be
Well, I
intentional.
have
I
to
love
tell
that.
you something that just happened that was a remarkable cue of safety for me. You showed me the picture of your precious dog,
Yeah,
and also
Bluebell.
look at the
Uh-huh.
time. It's 11:11,
Oh
which is
yes.
my daughter's birthday, and I always look at my clock at 11:11 and snap pictures and just text them to her,
Oh,
and
that's
so
so
when you
sweet.
showed me that picture, first of all, it's a dog, already you have my heart, and then that it was the 11:11, which, I
Yeah.
bring that up because I think one of the things in my personal journey around the nervous system has been to, like, savor and look for those little, like, cues from the universe that there is joy, there is buoyancy in the air, and that felt that way to me.
I love that. Oh my gosh. So you got a double hit there. You
I got
probably
a
got some
double hit.
oxytocin
I
from that
feel it.
from that too.
I feel it.
One other thing we haven't talked about, Michelle, that I think is really, really important to know is that the brain loves predictability.
Mm,
Even if it's predictably not good,
mm,
um, predictability gives us cues of safety because our brain, so if we don't know what to expect, our brain has to constantly be scanning for what could it be, and to protect us. And so when we get into these kind of, well, so two things about that. One is when we find ourselves kind of like going in loops where we're thinking about anxious thoughts, or like sometimes like I woke up in the middle of the night with like, oh, I need to remember to, tell Quinn to make sure she leaves a key for JP in case he needs to get into her garage this summer where he's storing his dorm stuff. Like I'm thinking about that in the middle of the night. And then my brain can start jumping to all the other things that I need to not forget. What I will often do, especially if I'm trying to sleep or if it's during the day and I notice I'm kind of thinking about something and it's winding me up,
mm.
is to stop and talk to my brain. And I say, brain, thank you so much for doing such a good job. You're just checking everything and you're making sure nothing falls through the cracks. And I just really appreciate that. You can be quiet now for a little
Mhm,
while and I'll touch back with you in the morning,
mm,
right? Or something
mhm,
like that. Or I'm going to go write this down and then let's have a tiny rest, right? So we can do that. But the other thing is like, how do we create, so if we don't know what's going to happen, if we don't know what to expect, the brain has to make all these predictive models of all the bad things that can happen, because its number one job is to keep us alive and keep us safe. So predictability gives us a lot of cues of safety. So again, if you have a routine first thing in the morning when you walk into your classroom, you have a routine when you get back into your car at the end of the day, or with your partner or whatever. Those are really great cues of safety, and our brain anticipates and even predicts that those are coming. It's great in classroom settings to, to front load, and, we can do all kinds of things, morning and afternoon rituals, or Friday afternoon reflection rituals, all these different things. But for us, um, even if things feel really unpredictable and uncertain, there are always things that are predictable. Like, for instance, it's May right now. We know that kids are squirrely this time of year. We're overwhelmed and busy this time of year. And we can wake up in the morning and we can go, okay, it's May. It might have some squirrely kids today, or it's September and we know it's gonna start getting chilly soon. We can go to the seasons like, oh, it's like now the bulbs are coming up, and that's what happens this time of year. Football season is starting, whatever it is, that we have these kind of rhythms that come with seasons, with the routines and rituals that we have. And these kinds of things, if we focus attention on them, can also help us feel grounded, and to know that there are things that always happen, even when we live in a world that continues to shock us that this reality is actually happening.
Yes, yes, like the anticipatory anxiety is off the charts. So
Yeah.
we have to ground ourselves in the things we feel like we can predict. And I know for me, a turning point was when I stopped trying to convince myself that, if this, or this happened, what would I do? And I just started to tell myself, like you kind of, in your examples, you created such a lovely picture of not just your car or your home being that harbor, but your inner world can be that harbor. And when I shifted from trying to predict or control external events and just told myself, I trust myself to handle whatever comes. I
Yeah.
that feels predictable to me. I know how I'll show up in the face of whatever. That took so much of the question marks out of it. It was just sort of like, yeah, we're gonna have the storms, and I can't predict the storms, but I can
Yeah.
predict how I'll show up.
Totally. I love that. And I think, one of the quotes in The Power of Showing Up is, if we want to be the harbor in a storm, we can't be the storm. And so, we do have, and of course, sometimes we're going to be the storm. Of course we are. But that's when we go and we go, okay, what is it I need to be able to show up for myself and to show up for other people? And in that book, we talk about the 4 S's of feeling safe and seen and soothed and secure in knowing that someone's going to show up for us, or secure knowing that, the other person feels that they'll get that from us. And I think, that idea of, again, what we tell ourselves, and so if we have something we can say where we're like, I may not know, but I'm a problem solver. And I can say that in my own head, or I'm not sure what to do right now, but I can take a breath and then I'll figure it out, and kind of these ways that we show up for ourselves, in giving ourselves these sort of cues of safety by the meaning we're constructing as it unfolds, versus, oh my God, here's another thing that we don't, and really, of course, our nervous systems are primed to expect that following COVID even. Like, we had this thing happen that we never thought would happen. And then there were the murder hornets. And then, and now we've got the mouse virus, and, whatever else it is. That if we continue to go, yeah, there will always be things that come that surprise us. And I am going to still be anchored and grounded, and focus on what I know and what I can do. And I think when we feel helpless, one of the most important things we can do is to mobilize. There were these incredible studies that showed, after a traumatic event like a horrible car accident or something like that, that people who kind of go into a collapse, shutdown, like instinct,
Mm-hmm.
had much higher rates of PTSD than people who mobilized,
Interesting.
and who did something, who flagged down help or who called 911 or who helped someone else. So I think when we go into helplessness and it leads us to collapse and shutting down, helplessness, hopelessness, we are putting ourselves much more in, like, we're really sitting in more vulnerability and more helplessness versus if we mobilize. And it might not even be directly related. Like, I don't know how much I can do today for the environment. I'm going to do whatever I can today for the environment, but I'm probably not going to solve that today. But I can mobilize and show up for somebody who's like, my
Mm-hmm.
best friend's dog is really ill right now. As soon as I'm done with my workday, I'm driving a couple hours to go meet with her and be with her at the dog hospital. It's not going to solve the environment today. In fact, I'm putting miles on my car. But if we mobilize to do something for ourselves or for someone else, it gives us a sense of agency that bleeds out into all the other areas of what we have to sit in.
Mm. Man, that's powerful.
Hi, I'm Katie Worden, producer of Oxygen for Educators. I want to spotlight our sponsor, TakiBox. TakiBox is an elementary school program that pairs innovative content with a tactile tool in daily practice to teach children to self monitor their own words and actions and their responses to others. It's a proven tool that reduces behavior incidents by 66%. Through daily self reflection, students build self awareness, self regulation, and meaningful connections. TakiBox is a light lift for teachers with a big impact on student well being. Go to takibox.com to learn more and become a TakiBox district.
And
Yeah.
for people who do tend toward the helpless, hopeless shutdown, what is the path to more mobilization that
Yeah.
feels manageable?
Yeah, it's interesting when we think about like states of regulation are kind of where our nervous system, our sympathetic and parasympathetic are well balanced. Even if we're frustrated or anxious or angry or whatever, we're still able to manage ourselves. And in fact, Dan Siegel defines regulation, I love this, as the ability to monitor and modify. So you're kind of monitoring like, "Oh, I'm feeling really anxious. I'm
Mhm.
gonna go for a walk," right?
Mhm.
So, it's sort of like temperature regulation. You notice you're warm, you take off a layer, right? And so that's kind of where we want to be, is in this state of being able to kind of still be in charge of ourselves and manage things. When we go into hyper arousal, where our sympathetic is really driven up, this is where we get into these more frenetic,
Mhm.
reactive states that are kind of anxious and dialed way up. And those are kind of more intuitive for us to kind of regulate. We know we need to breathe or move or connect with someone and talk. When we talk about hypoarousal, where we're kind of more shut down, withdrawn, kind of more collapsy, that's a little bit harder sometimes to kind of get back up. But I will tell you, so much of we tend to think that our emotions start in our brain and then our body feels it. Like, I feel anxious, then eventually my muscles tighten up. But it's actually almost always the other way around, that what happens in our body is incredible, like processing all of this information. By the time it gets to our prefrontal cortex, which is so slow to process stuff, and we're like, "Oh, I'm noticing I'm anxious," my body's like, "Duh, haven't you been knowing? We've been telling you for 3 days." So, to me, one of the best ways to activate that collapse shutdown, even when we don't feel like it, is to move our bodies,
Mm.
even if it starts as a stroll.
Mhm.
And one of the things I really encourage people to do is to lean into the sensory. So, for example, if you're feeling really shut down, collapse, whatever, if you can get yourself to go, be like, I'm going to go walk 1 block,
Mhm.
or I'm going to do 2 loads of laundry, like getting yourself up and moving. If you can listen to music that's not depressing, it's a little more activating, or something you really enjoy that really well, like predictable, what notes and what words are coming next, that's really powerful. So if you can combine movement and music, that's great. If you can't even get there, start focusing on visual sensory input. Start looking for, like, go as you go outside, go, you can just sit if you need to, or if you start walking, start looking for the color blue,
Mm.
then start looking for the color red, and just go through the rainbow and look for colors. And what you're doing is you're gently kind of activating and waking up your sensory system, your nervous system. With a kid, if you can roll a ball toward them and encourage them to roll it back. Like if you think about a kid that's like on a bed, shut down, doesn't want to talk, kind of sad and withdrawn, doesn't really want to share, but maybe quietly crying. If you go in and you're like, woo, come
Yeah.
on, let's go do something fun, it's a total miss.
Yep.
But if you sit at the edge of the bed and you maybe start gently rubbing their leg and you're like, oh, sweetie, it looks like you're having a hard time. And you're using some words, but you're kind of slowly getting there. And then you're like, hey, why don't you get up and let's just go outside. Let's go sit outside for a few minutes. You get them to move a little bit. That's kind of what we're thinking about, even for ourselves, is kind of a slow dialing. If you almost think about it like a volume dial or a thermostat dial, if you just crank it up, that's going to be a total miss. But if you slowly dial it up, music, movement, sensory focus, even like for me, I know this is weird, but like animal videos, like I love like screaming goats, and like, or like retrievers eating things like that are totally out of control, like that kind of stuff. I'll start laughing and smiling, and that can kind of wake me up. So something that you enjoy that can kind of get you laughing a little bit, that's a really good thing. The trick there though is you often don't feel like it, you often don't want to. But if you can say, this is something I'm going to be intentional, this is something I know I can do, I don't feel like it, I'm going to do it anyway. I don't feel like exercising, I'm going to do it anyway. I don't feel like eating healthy, I'm going to do it anyway. So it's part of our health and our mental health to do what we need, and then we start feeling like it.
Yeah. And from your earlier comments, this notion that our state creates our story. And so if we can give ourselves these cues that are almost like a fast track to a more regulated nervous system state, like laughing, like joy, like walking, looking around, those are things you wouldn't do if you were in true danger. And so
Right.
the motivator to do those things when it just feels like, I don't know, I think to some people's ears, it might just feel like saccharine. But if you understand it in the context of the nervous system, that you're literally potentially changing your state, which then changes your glasses that you're wearing and changes your story of yourself, the world, other people. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And I think, one other thing I just thought of as you said that is like, even if you don't feel like anything else, take a shower, take a hot bath. Being in water is really regulating, whether you're too high or too low. It kind of pulls you together. But, I think what you're saying there is really important that we're coming back to. And that's the idea that straight states can become traits. And, I'm going to divert just a little bit here to talk about, when I am talking to parents and sometimes educators, and I'm saying like when a kid is having a meltdown, instead of like punishing them, if we in that moment go, like, I'm right here with you while you're feeling this. And we co-regulate in the moment. Okay. So when you think about regulation as monitoring and modifying, co-regulation is the ability to monitor what a child is or another adult is experiencing, and then helping them modify to get them back into this regulated state. So it's about helping monitor and modify. And sometimes when I teach this idea of co-regulation, parents will say to me, but you're indulging them, like you're spoiling them. Why in the world, if their behavior is like that, would you comfort them and help them? And what I often say in response is, this is not coddling at all. In fact, what I'm doing is just like when I do reps with a weight and I build my muscle. When I help a child go from a dysregulated state back into a regulated state, I'm giving their brain a rep of going from dysregulated to regulated.
Yeah.
And the more I help them do that, the more that firing and wiring will happen, so they can do it for themselves, and they can do it for themselves quickly. It becomes who they are. So to the same point for us is that if you find yourself dysregulated and you start using these tools and you keep using them, those are reps, and our brains continue to be plastic. And when we begin to notice or monitor and modify what we need and give it to ourselves, that those states over time become our traits, and it becomes we create automaticity in terms of our wiring,
Mm.
so that the next time you get into these states, your brain now is predicting and anticipating these predictive models of, oh, I can get back to feeling better because I know how to do this. I've done this before. And it becomes automatic and it happens faster, more effectively. And then we can create meaning. Other people can start watching it and seeing it. So it creates these ripple effects too. So it's really not at all saccharine. It's very based in science of creating the kinds of repeated experiences intentionally that make our brains fire and wire so that we have automaticity toward regulation.
There you have it. There you have it. And I love the monitor and modify. Like that is so sticky and
Isn't it great? I love it. Thank you, Dan Siegel.
Thank you, Dan Siegel. And I'm thinking about like people I've worked with and myself and seasons where I was monitoring but not modifying, or I was modifying without the context of actually monitoring what I might need. So the combo platter is just magic.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, if we're not doing the noticing or the monitoring, often maybe it even works, but it's more reactive.
Yes.
And so what really the noticing or the monitoring piece is truly, like, if you and I would really nerd out, we could get into, it's really about attunement. It's really about neural synchrony. It's really about mindfulness, paying attention on purpose, and pausing to kind of like take in the information before we just react. Now, obviously, there are times we have to react instantly without thinking things through and all of that. And that, but the more we're spending time being thoughtful and practicing these things, the more our intuitions around these things in those moments where we do have to react become better too.
Mm-hmm. Love that.
Yeah.
What's different for you in 2026 working with folks around this interpersonal neurobiology and regulating their nervous system, all of this compared to like 10 years ago? What do you see in a different way?
In terms of what I'm teaching more, and I get to do this really exciting work as a consultant and thought partner at Nike, working with some elite athletes. And so, what I think about, like, more and more what I've been teaching them, more and more what I've been working with my team on at the Center for Connection, these helping professionals, and what I've been doing in like PDs at schools and things like that, is I'm doing a lot more. That is not just neurobiology, but neurophysiology, and I'm bringing the body much more into this. And it's funny, like 10 years ago, I think the body was thought much more of as like doing body work, like much more woo-woo. And I'm definitely not a woo-woo person. I'm a left brain science, person. But we know that there are these bundles of nerves in our heart region and our gut region that work like mini brains, and they process incredible information. And our body has incredible information. And not only that, but in the years that I've spent doing therapy with kids and working with kids in schools, if I can get them to move their bodies differently or breathe differently, I can see a shift in their thinking and their emotions and their behavior a lot faster than if we do insight-based, narrative-based talk therapy.
Yes.
And so I think for me, one of the big things that I think is so powerful as we kind of flush out, like, we had the decade of the brain, that was a few decades ago now. I kind of think it's sort of like a little bit of like the decade of the body. And then now I feel like we're in the, like, how does this come together, where we think about not just top down processing, where we're thinking about the prefrontal cortex, which obviously is super popular. Prefrontal cortex, love it, need it, big fan. But I think it's limiting to only focus on that type of processing, because we have this bottom up processing or body up processing that is much more about what's happening in our nervous system. The brain is part of the embodied nervous system. It's the whole thing. So if we just look at the organ in our skull, I think we're really missing things. And so I think much more of like, so if we see behavior in kids, we're like, okay, does that require a top-down approach that's much more like logical and thought-based and narrative-based? Or does this require more of a bottom-up approach that's much more about movement and nonverbal cues of safety and these kinds of things? And I think when we think about both of those and how they come together, that's truly integration that Dan and I wrote about in The Whole Brain Child. So I think that's really powerful to think about that. And of course, to go back to the power of relationships that that really there's, top down, bottom up, and then between, between us, and how we have tremendous power to influence each other in good and bad ways. And that in this era, in the last 10 years, social media has become so much more a part of our daily lives. And listen, I really enjoy a lot of it. I get some great recipes. I even get some really helpful health information. There's a lot of
Goat
terrible stuff out there
videos.
too. Yeah, the goat videos. I got this great non-toxic laundry detergent concoction the other day that I'm super excited about. I get totally targeted, and so I thought, those can be micro moments of joy. But I think our algorithms have a lot to do with what our daily life experiences are. And mine is full of like home hacks and animals, and those make me really happy. But like I have a kid who really, really is worried about the world. And so he reads a lot of content about how terrible things are in the world. And so we've talked about that, and like, what is your algorithm doing to your daily experience? And so I think we have to be really intentional, even more so than we did 10 years ago. When I grew up in a Southern Baptist church, and we had this little song that my mom used to sing to us that I still stand by, which is like, be careful, little eyes, what you see, be careful, little ears, what you hear, be careful, little mouth, what you say. And I do think that, should not be completely cut off from the world. That is not, we have a responsibility to know what's happening in the world, but we also have a responsibility to mind our nervous system. And there are times we can handle more, and there are times we need to stop. We need to say, I cannot consume anymore. And I'm going to start making sure my algorithm, by what I click on, by what I search for, is something that brings me more regulation and not less.
Right, because we can't do our work in the world as educators, as therapists, as whoever, in a dysregulated state. And so if we're as informed as possible, but shut down or fight or flight, who cares? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think having like one or two times where you're going to you're going to read the news in the morning, whatever. The trickle
Mhm.
is constant. The trickle is giving us cues of threat nonstop. So I think we have to really be intentional about that, and monitor and modify.
And the model now is outrage, fear, like even just like the little like summaries of news segments, they're so inflammatory. It's like
So inflammatory.
just it's what is that phrase? It's not a bug, it's the feature. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So, like, this it's not accidental that every single news thing is like, "Ah, worst thing ever," that is the way that they are getting you to click. So you have
Yeah.
to choose. You have to make a decision of, like, is monitor it's exactly what you were saying, monitor and modify.
And I'll claim this outright. And I am I am an optimist. I'm definitely a glass, full, and then let's have six more full glasses kind of person. My husband says, there's a like, are you a bird in the hand or a bird in the bush? And I'm like, I'm neither. I want like the bird in the hand and the bird in the bush, and I want all the bushes with all the birds. Like I'm like someone who just like loves I love the world, and I think my parents did an incredible job teaching me to cultivate gratitude every day. And I'm the kind of person, like, I get in my car and I'm like, oh, it's so warm in here. Like, I was kind of chilly. Or like I walk outside and I'm like, oh, the air feels so nice. Or gosh, darn, I sure love this Diet Coke so much. It's so good. And I think I do. I think I savor and I cultivate gratitude all day long. And I think that really is a huge part of like equanimity and health for me, mental health.
Yes.
I think that that we are in this time where everything you said is true. We are flooded with all the horrible things because that's what you said at the beginning of our conversation. That's what sells. That's what makes money. That's what gets people to click. And of course it does. That's how our brain is wired. Our brain is wired to keep us safe. It's our number one job. So it has a negativity bias, and it has a bias to go towards something that is inflammatory or potentially dangerous or threatening, because that's its number one job, is to protect us from that. So of course it has to orient to that, which is where the intentionality comes in. But I want to say this, and this is, I don't know, I haven't said this publicly, I don't think. I feel really hopeful about the world. I hate the world right now. I do. I think there's so much horribleness. I don't remember ever a time, like I'm telling my kids, like, you are only seeing this small window when you've been kind of conscious about the state of the world. But I promise you, like, if you look at history, there have been lots of other times where things, and I know that things are different now than they've ever been in lots of ways. But if you look at the statistics, you can look at really good ones and really bad ones. And even on the same topics, we have, teen pregnancies are way lower than they've ever been in history. That's a good thing. We have, when you think about, like, I'm a kid who was born in 1971, like, we just rolled around on the floorboards. Like, we didn't even wear seatbelts. And far fewer children die in car accidents. Kids don't die from the same kinds of childhood, illnesses. Like, the world is better and safer in many, many, many ways, but we really don't hear about that or focus on it. And I do feel hopeful about the world. I feel hopeful that systems regulate themselves over time. And even when we're in really dark times, I think there are a lot of things, we don't ignore that. We still need to mobilize and do what we need to do. But I think there are a lot of really, really great things to celebrate, and including that there are educators who still show up every day, underpaid, under-resourced, asked to do way too much, and we still show up every day to invest in the next generation. Like,
Right.
if we just think about that, like, that gives me great hope. That gives me great hope.
No, I share your hope, and I even think it's tied to the destruction we're seeing, that there's something that has to fall before something new gets built
Yep.
that's better for more people more of the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
We
breaking
do. We
news.
really need to focus on it. Yeah. Yeah.
And I do agree with you. I think educators doing this work has made it just so in my face. Like, this is a group of people who are, like, if you are tracking on who they are and what they do and why they do it, it is impossible not to be hopeful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think even though a lot of educators feel despair and dysregulation and exhaustion, that we still keep going.
Yeah,
That's really powerful.
it's really
Yeah, that's really
powerful.
powerful.
And
And I think the other thing to keep in mind is, like, that's one way we can mobilize, is to show up for each other. And I think educators, like most educators, like, become really close with the other people they work with. Maybe it's trauma bonding, I don't know, but that we show up for each other, and that we create these communities, where we really help each other feel safe and seen and soothed and secure, and knowing we're going to keep showing up for each other. That's incredible. It's such a safety cue for us.
And in the absence of that community care, it's not a fair fight. Like, our nervous
No.
systems will not regulate in 2026 without that community piece and the co-regulation. And
Yeah.
and you've painted such a beautiful picture in this time of all of the things are true, and you deserve
And
to have the shelter in your car, in your home, in your inner world, in your relationships, and doing those things and prioritizing those things makes you the kind of person in the room with children that you want to be and that the kids need.
We need it more than ever.
Mm.
We need it more than ever. I remember Dan Siegel telling me about a conversation he had with the Dalai Lama, and someone asked the Dalai Lama, like, how can you laugh or smile in a world with so much suffering? And he said, because there is so much suffering and pain and destruction, we must laugh. We must smile. And I think, we need it more than ever. And, if you've ever had an experience where you've had a significant loss where you're grieving, and then the first time, like after you've had the horrible news, you kind of laugh about something, all of a sudden it's almost like jarring, like, is it okay for me to laugh? Is it okay for me to feel okay for a moment? And the answer is even more so, do we need that, right? And as we have new experiences, our brains are constantly remapping. And so I think when we give ourselves opportunities to care for ourselves, to build our capacity, I mean, I think when we do that, it allows us to make a bigger impact. I often think about, like, a lot of this is like Ross Greene's beautiful work, but the idea of, like, when we're thinking about the demands that are upon us, and our demands are constantly in shift every moment, every day, over time, and our capacity is always in shift. And when the demands and our capacity are a good fit, or our capacity exceeds the demand, we do great. But when the demand exceeds our capacity chronically, that's where we often feel anxiety and helplessness and hopelessness and depression and just devastation about how we feel about the world. So the answer to that is, are there ways we can reduce demand? Sometimes we can't, but sometimes we can. Sometimes we can say, you know what, instead of cooking, instead of making bento boxes with woodland shaped creatures for my child's lunchbox, I'm just going to throw the ham in there, right? Like, sometimes our expectations of ourselves, like, I'm not cutting lunch that looks like woodland creatures. No, you're buying school lunch today. Or we have Chipotle one night instead of cooking another night. Like, sometimes we can reduce the demands, but sometimes we can't. But one thing we for sure have control over is building our capacity and being intentional about filling our tank, so that if the demands are high, how do we build our capacity so that we're not living in that space where we feel like we can never meet the demands that are upon us. And I think that's another way to think about regulation and intentionality. And we need it more than ever to build our capacity and to care for ourselves, so that we have the capacity to do good in the world and to take care of others.
I mean, I think that is such a perfect note to end on, but is there anything we haven't talked about that you think would be in service of the listeners?
I think just seek laughter and joy, and just find ways to listen to music and to laugh at things and to find things that delight you and savor those, even if they're just micro moments throughout the day. It makes a huge difference.
Beautiful. And do it unapologetically. Seek those moments of joy, levity, lightness, freedom unapologetically. If you hear anything from our conversation, because those moments put you in a nervous system state where you can then be of service, which I know everyone who listens, that's their chief preoccupation. So it's a precursor to you doing your work in the world.
It's sort of similar, Michelle, to kind of the idea of play. Like, kids who have more heaviness and more difficulty and have a harder life and have more challenges need more play. Like, more play, more play. We need more play, right? And so, things that feel like joy and play, play is really doing something just for the sake of enjoyment, for no other purpose. So I think, for me, my favorite play is like hanging out with my friends, and, going thrifting or, whatever. And so, I think just that idea of laughter and all those things is really a way we can think about it, is seeking play and playfulness in our lives too. We need it more than ever.
We need it. We need it. It's an important part of the puzzle, and it's a very strong signal to your nervous system that you are safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Tina. I love you so much. Thank you
I
for
love you
all of
too,
this
Michelle.
wisdom.
Well, thank
Appreciate
you for
you.
all that you're doing in the world. I love this idea of oxygen for educators. We all need it. And it really is I guess that's something else we can all do, is continue to listen to the podcast and support each other. And I think, you always have such an incredible heart for the world. You inspire me, and I feel hope knowing you're in the world.
Double back. Thank you, Tina. Welcome back, Chris.
Thank you. You're going to have to keep us on track in this conversation, because I do not want to make this my own personal therapy session after having watched this.
Well, we should say out loud, like, you actually watched it twice to prep, right? Because it was so impactful to you.
I'm not going to lie, I watched it 3 times. And I printed and notated all over the transcript. So really and truly, she can bill me.
Well, tell me what it is that was so resonant for you.
I really felt like I was on an emotional roller coaster, because I would hear something that if I thought about as a mom whose kids are one of my kids is already out of the house, and it was like a movie flashback of things I could have done better if I would have had that information. So I would start kind of sinking a little bit. And then I had to copy her tip about talking to your brain to make my brain stop. And it worked.
In real time.
It worked in real time. But it was hard. It was really, really hard, because there were so many pieces that I realized I did wrong. Because I didn't have the information.
Yeah, you did it with the wisdom of the moment, which is all we can do.
Yes, and so it really resonated with me, and I jotted down the exact quote that she delivered, which was, she said that assumptions made as educators that are wrong leads to suffering for us and harm to kids, even when we're trying to help. And that felt very resonant with me, because I could really picture times when one of my children was in kind of that shutdown mode, and I was the mom who walked in with the volume all the way up, as she said, trying to be cheerful and get everybody to, and that doesn't work. It fell flat, and it did.
Yeah.
And so I felt regret around that.
Yeah.
But also hopeful when Tina turned around and talked about, like, that is her mission in life, to get this content to parents and to educators. It makes me cry. I appreciate that she's willing to do that, because it could have been transformational. And it will be for me, even from this point forward.
Right.
But that was it just was a bit of an emotional roller coaster for me, because it was hurt paired with hope.
Yeah, it's so lovely and so relatable. And I've actually experienced that myself with Tina's work, and talked to other people who've had that experience of the whole, like, I wish I could do this over with this frame. It's that powerful.
It's so powerful.
Yeah.
And I did want to open with that, because I thought if there was anyone who's listening right now and had some of those stories from their classroom or their own home pop up, like, I feel you, I get it, I felt the same way.
Yeah.
But it's, what do we do with it from this moment forward?
Yeah. 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 And one of the things she and Dan talk about is sort of this good enough, and that I can't remember the exact stats, but it's something like we can get it wrong as parents when it comes to attunement, 30 or 40. We can get it right only 30 to 40% of the time, and our children will grow and have secure attachments long term if, when we get it wrong, we repair. So I think that's so comforting. It's like, we do not have to get this right anywhere close to 100% for our kids to get what they need to go out in the world and do their thing.
Thank you for saying that.
Listen, I rocked myself to sleep with that stat many a time.
I hope her sons grow up knowing how lucky they are that she was their mother.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Her books, transformed me as a therapist and as a parent. It was what I used to tell people when I would recommend the whole brain child or no drama discipline is like, flip through this and you will be a different parent by the end of the weekend. And that
Wow.
really was my experience. And I bet I gave that book away 20, 30 times at this point. Like I've given it to so many people. Um, it's really good. Like when she says from her body of work, she's come to some conclusions. It's not like me saying it or someone else saying it. It's like a really big deal. So when she said that through all of these years of doing this work, it really has narrowed into total clarity about the importance of cues of safety, my ears perked up wildly, partly because that aligns completely with Deb Dana's work and, everything that's kind of guiding me at this point, but also because I just trust her capacity, her rigor. She's so rigorous, intellectually rigorous, that if she shares something, I know it's been through,
Mm.
a true, I don't know, it just has more weight than someone else pontificating.
What fascinated me about, well, the whole concept of cues of safety and threat, it was very helpful. But what fascinated me was that the cues of safety or threats can come from your own mind.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like I always, here I go making this my therapy session again, but I
It's so precious. Please don't stop.
I always make the comment that I get in my own way. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Because I'm creating cues of threat for myself inside my own mind.
Yes.
And so that was that was really helpful.
Yeah. I feel like that piece where she really broke that down and talked about what it sounds like and what it looks like when we create internal cues of safety or internal cues of threat. Like if people listen to nothing else, if they just get that 30 seconds, they could wake up feeling real different about life tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Totally agree.
What else about cues of safety?
The states become traits piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're operating in that place all the time, that does become who you are. Like the first time I listened to it, she used those words before she said states become traits. It becomes who you are. And I mean, that's when I perked up.
Yeah.
And just got it.
Yeah.
And just for kids to know that.
Yeah.
Early on before they adopt those behaviors. And for our listeners, we're back to that, the most powerful position there is.
Mm-hmm.
Because to teach even that one thing and model that one thing is completely transformational.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's so wild that the people listening get up in the morning, go to work, shape trajectories, go home and go to sleep. Like, I'm just like, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Amazing.
And,
I was searching for Tina's words on that because she said the message to educators, if you regulate yourself, your passion can return, and that's a win for generations. I can't even say that without tearing up. Do you see what this episode did to me?
You're tender today. I love it.
But hopefully that feels inspirational to people who are listening, just to hear that
poetry
said to them. It's poetry.
Yeah,
it's really
poetry.
beautiful. And also, in light of, that constant trickle of negativity,
Mm-hmm.
staying focused on that piece,
Mm-hmm.
the win for generations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's
And
just
it
tattoo it.
actually,
Everybody
like-
should just tattoo it on.
I dare you to get a Tina Payne Bryson tattoo. And that way, when you go see them next year, whenever you're going, you can have her like a giant sleeve of all of her beautiful words and maybe like her face.
I just
She
got
won't be
uninvited.
freaked
Thanks
out.
a lot,
She
Michelle.
won't be freaked out at all.
What else came up for you? Let us stay focused.
Well, the cues of safety was very sticky for me for all the reasons I've already talked about after we finished the conversation, but also the way she framed the intentionality around it, and how easy it is to underestimate small cues. I feel like my whole life right now is small cues and curating small cues and savoring small cues. Like, um, that was big. I feel like she painted a picture of how our relationship with cues of safety and cues of threat in our environment shape our physiology, and then that state can become our trait. I don't know, like, I'm literally repeating stuff you've already said, but that one was huge. And then the other one that I um walked away thinking about all week was Dan Siegel's definition of regulation:
I had that down.
to monitor and modify. I feel like that's an instruction book. Like, that's all you would have to know about this huge body of work to change the experience of your life if you just start getting into relationship with that monitoring. And like everything we've talked about on the podcast so far, and Tina talked about it too, doing the monitoring from a place of real self-compassion and generosity of spirit, so that it doesn't become like one more thing to be self-punishing about. And then pairing it with, okay, I know this, so now what am I going to do? It also echoes Deb Dana's. Do you remember how she talked about the map it, track it, shape it, related to the nervous system? It's the same thing. It's like, get to know what you look like in the different nervous system states, get to know the things that trigger you into them or glimmer you up into that ventral vagal. And then the next very important question is, what are you going to do about it? To me, the first two, the map it and track it, are the monitor, and then the shape it is the modify.
And what I liked too about it is just the concrete examples, and they're seemingly small. Singing and dancing and walking and googly eyes on your coffee maker. I mean, they're small things, but it offers a way to not have to white knuckle your way through it.
Yeah.
To actually just do the things, and then you feel the way you want to feel. That also I thought was helpful. Like, you don't wait to do the things until you feel like doing the things. Do the things, and then the feeling will come. That was really helpful to me. You love the googly eyes, I can tell.
Well, I did love the googly eyes. It was so charming. But also, when you were talking I think I was a cheerleader in high school.
Oh, I am sorry. I did not know that. And are you serious?
Yes. Head cheerleader, to be exact.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
But anyway, we had a cheer that was, to be enthusiastic, you must act enthusiastic. It's one of the way we hyped ourselves up. And it came to mind when you were talking about Tina's point of, like, sometimes you have to do stuff before you feel like doing it, knowing that on the other side of it, you'll be in a different nervous system state and experience the world differently. So there you have it.
Learned something new today. I'm going to text Patrick for a photo of this.
I had some 80s hair too, so get ready for it.
Oh my. On the monitor and modify, another aha for me was that the body is the first to kind of tense up, because I operate from such a logical place, as you know. Who is my body? What? I have one of those. And so that was really fascinating to me, and it gave me the logical reason to pay more attention to my body.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Yeah.
That just made a whole lot of sense. Also interesting, just the hyperarousal versus hypo. And that's when I really clued into thinking back to when my kids have been in the hypoarousal state, which I don't identify with a lot because I don't go there very often.
Yeah.
And so I approached parenting the way what would have worked for me
Yeah.
instead of what they needed.
Yeah.
I loved her example of going in and just touching a leg and saying, let's go outside for just a little bit, like just that coaxing gently, softly, instead of probably playing upbeat music and having a dance party, which is probably what I did. Calm. So that was really interesting. And then also the concept of top down versus body up and in between. There's just the putting the language around that I loved.
I did giggle to myself when she said that the way her work has changed is that it's become like more about the body and not just about the brain. And because I was like, oh, yes, one more point for embodied work to chip away at Chris's bias against.
Well, it's not a bias against, it's a lack of understanding.
But you're like almost fully part of the cult at this point. I feel like and I love what you said, that the way she framed it, it like gave your logical, very analytical mind a place to make the monitoring the body make sense or a case for it. That's very interesting.
And I would like to point out that even Dr. Bryson said that the body work used to seem a little woo-woo.
She did. She did. Yeah.
So that was very interesting.
That's part of what I mean. It's like when someone like Tina comes to the conclusion, it means something because she's put it through some real intellectual rigor. I'd be there because a butterfly landed on my shoulder. I mean, but she's takes it to another level.
Yes, yes.
Hey, what about her quote? If we want to be the harbor in a storm, we can't beat the
See the
storm.
storm. Yes.
Oh my God.
I know. There's another tattoo.
Yeah, that would actually be a great tattoo.
Right? Yeah. That one hit close. That hurt a little bit too to hear.
In what way?
Because I start going through the movie of when I've been the storm. And yeah.
It's interesting because I'm thinking of just my observation of you as a parent, and like I'm thinking of how naturally you harbor. So is your tape also going off of all the times you were attuned to them and you were the harbor?
No.
Okay, good.
That's why I had to have a talk with my brain, you see.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that because I think that's huge for everyone listening, because the second you move more deeply into self-awareness territory, if you fail to pair it with self-compassion, you're going to retreat quick because it's too painful.
I also think it's helpful to have someone like Tina saying that she still wakes up and has to have the conversation with her brain, even if it's, just a to-do list. Like, I think that's the example she gave. But if somebody who's that in the work still has that problem, it's a reminder. And I think I wrote, somewhere did I write that? Oh, it's a natural reaction to freak out. That's the brain's one job to protect.
Yeah.
So that's just a natural reaction. And so then what do you do with that? I think that one piece, and then what you commented on, I wrote down your quote, whatever happens, I can trust myself to handle it. That right there is probably the biggest game changer that came out of the conversation for me personally.
Again, it's so fascinating because I experience you as living your life that way, but your internal world maybe isn't as gentle as
well. And I think that's what I mean. Like, I do a lot of white knuckling, And I think of like, I know I'm strong, so I know I can get through anything. But there's a difference in white knuckling versus doing it the other way.
Yeah.
Which is honestly part of the gift of being your friend and doing this work with you is I have changed the way I think about that a lot over the last several years. And then she just kicked it up a notch. So thanks, ladies. Please don't invoice me too.
We're
Okay?
here for you and you're here for us. It's beautiful. And I promise you, I can't say for sure, and Tina's going to listen to this, so she'll be able to say for sure, but I bet you a lot that if she were here, she could give you 15 examples of of feelings she has that are similar about her parenting, even though she had all the information. Like that's just reality. I could definitely give you all that information about my own parenting and where I, didn't apply this stuff even when I knew it. Did I ever tell you about a time when I was on the news being interviewed about empathy and helping kids learn empathy? Did I tell you this?
You
And then
should, yes,
I
but you
came
should tell
home.
listeners right now.
I came home, the girls had caught it. They never did, but they caught that one for some reason. And they were young. They were in elementary, and they said, "Mom, we don't think you should talk on TV about things you don't do at home." And they were right. It was like, yeah, noted, duly noted. Yes, I humble
so
myself
funny.
before you.
That's so funny.
It's
Well,
just
Emma was
real.
here. Emma was here this weekend, and she is 19 for those who don't know. And we were just kind of going through childhood things and talking a lot about parenting. And I asked her if she had any feedback or anything that she wanted to tell me, and she told me I did the best I could.
But that's so lovely.
It is so lovely, but so I was in a place of processing, 19 years worth of parenting.
But think about what you did in raising her, that's how she met that question. There's
Yeah.
all the proof you need.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. So lovely. And isn't that the case? Like, wisdom of the moment, we do the best we can. We do a better, closer job to what we wish when we're in a regulated nervous system state.
Well,
but
I
we
think
aren't always.
that's what I would say. That's the thing that I've learned the most over the last few years is how dysregulated my nervous system has been.
Yeah.
And so when I'm looking back from that standpoint,
Yeah.
and it could have been, it could have been so easy, right? Go for some walks, get more sleep, eat better. Like, it's not rocket science,
Yeah.
but it was just complete unawareness. And I was so steeped in spirituality, and I was a very intentional, conscientious human, but I missed that kind of step-by-step instruction book that could have made it all so much easier to do, rather than, like, I keep going back to the term white knuckling,
Yeah.
which so I hope for people listening, this is resonating, because educators need this, more than ever.
Yeah.
And I do think that the guidebook is there.
Yeah.
You just have to open it and do it.
And I don't think you missed anything. I don't think it was in the conversation in the way it is now.
Yeah. Well, it's so important, and I'm so grateful that Tina exists and wants to champion the work, has been championing the work. I thought it was interesting when she said, she was talking about the podcast and the physiological sigh, and she just kind of said in passing, I've been talking about this for however many decades. She just, it's so ingrained in her, and it's been embedded in her work, and I bet she feels like I'm happy people are finally listening.
Yeah. Yeah.
In addition to the 4 million people who read her books, but
But that it's getting, like, it's infiltrating popular culture now. And
Yes.
so there's less chance that people are not going to have some exposure to better understanding their interpersonal neurobiology.
Well, this is interesting. So Emma and I bought a car while she was here this weekend. And so we were at the dealership and we were really focused on not getting taken advantage of. And I'd done so much work. And my friend that has a car dealership connection was typing in VIN numbers and helping me know what to offer. And like, I'm just not a negotiator. So I don't want people to negotiate with me. So I don't negotiate with others. Let's just pay the price. But I was trying to play the game. And we thought we were doing really well. And then we agreed and we got over to the finance department and they started tacking on all these different charges and changing what the sales guy had told us and, you know, all these different things. The guy finally said, "Do you guys want a minute?" And we were like, "Yes." And he leaves. And my 19-year-old daughter looks at me. He's like, "Mom, I think we should first just take a deep breath." And so we took a deep breath and then we chatted through what we were going to do. But I thought, how amazing that she knew to do that.
There's no scenario where 19-year-old Tina, Chris, or Michelle would have done that. There's no chance. It was not in the water at that point.
Yeah, I thought that was really
Yeah.
remarkable.
Oh.
So it's working. It's getting out there.
And did y'all, and you got the car? And
We did. She
yeah.
drove back to Austin. Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. Speaking of ships sailing, wasn't that analogy of what it's like? That was another thing that just broke my heart into little pieces when she described how hard it is for a child to get through a day. And she made the analogy of the ships in the sea. And
Yeah.
that was intense
Yeah.
and beautiful.
Mm-hmm. And so different, such a different way of thinking about relationships, which is, am I shaping this person or am I creating a container and a soft place to land so that they can develop as they're going to? Really different.
Really different. And I wondered when she made the comment that often when she tells parents that, or that parents' reaction is, am I coddling too much? I wondered, like, is that because they're approaching it top down, like they're thinking logically instead of thinking through the whole system and what is it, body up, top down, in between?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it's fear-based. Like, you want
don't
to
wanna
do
fail
the
your
right
kid,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah. And most of our parenting history in this country has been command and control, and that's the way you create good humans, but that's not very nervous system friendly.
Mm-mm. No, it's not. Okay, one other thing that I really want to talk about, and I'm conscious that I could sit here and talk to you about this forever. We could record 5 of these if you want. But I don't want to get charged 5 times.
You need to go and get your tattoos and just call it.
I loved the conversation around building our capacity because that moves it so far away from, I think you said saccharine or woo-woo or anything like that. Like, if you think about this, I am building my capacity to be a better person for myself and other people in the world, then that makes those googly eyes really important.
Yeah.
Instead of small or silly.
Yeah.
And so I kind of, just for listeners, I jotted down the sort of the formula that I felt like she gave: play, doing something just for the sake of enjoyment, which again, I felt like she was talking to me because everything I do, I try to figure out how I can pay for my kids. The physiological sigh, and I loved her suggestion of starting a class that way, starting meetings that way, language externally and internally, and how she just gave examples of that phrasing that was helpful for me. The idea of the importance of music and maybe even creating a classroom playlist, how she did that with her kids. I thought, okay, what if, you did that with your classroom? I loved the conversation around tricking your social media algorithm to bring the things that
Or screaming goats.
Yes, the screaming goats. Bring on the screaming goats. You should get that tattoo. Bring on the screaming goats. Uh, Also, the 4 S's to help kids and each other feel safe, seen, soothed, and secure. I had a whole lot of fun thinking about who in my life does that for me and who I do that for.
Yeah.
I loved the 4 S's. That's in the book that's coming out, or her newest book,
No, it's in her Power of Showing Up book, I
Power of
think.
Showing Up. Okay,
But,
that's
but
right.
it may be sprinkled in several of her books, actually.
That's her
But for
tattoo,
sure
I
in that
think.
one.
And then the last piece was a gratitude practice. And one of my observations, when she talked about being such a grateful person, she offered gratitude for her parents
Yeah.
for teaching her that. Like she didn't even talk about gratitude without offering gratitude to someone else. And I just thought that was so beautiful. Like that's really clearly embedded in her bones.
Yes, and her set point is obviously very high, and then she does practices to kind of reinforce. But even if your set point is not as high as Tina's, you can change your experience of this world with these practices. Maybe even more so if your set point isn't high.
That would be a fun class practice, actually, to do like a gratitude list. That's what I do on my birthdays. I get a big sticky note out and I write all the things that I'm grateful for. And then I hang it on my
How big?
closet.
Like a flip chart size?
And I hang it on
picturing
my
just, like,
closet.
a regular sticky note. I'm like, geez, maybe stretch a little. Oh, so you do like a big flip chart paper, you put it on your closet and you write all the things you're grateful for as one of your birthday rituals
And then I
That's
hang
so
it in my
nice.
closet and look at it for the year.
for the year. Oh, do you continue to jot, or it's a one time, but then you
It's
have
just like
it
a
as a visual
brain
reminder?
dump and then I look at it. Yeah.
That's so cool.
That and my
Love
birthday
that you
song.
do that. Love
Um,
it, love it.
What else do you have that you want to talk about?
I wanted to talk about how young Tina, she talked about that she went on that mission trip and she realized in that trip that she needed to invest in people, and what that meant to her was being a teacher. I thought that one sentence was such a love letter to the educators in this country and that are listening. Like, yeah.
100%. And her comment that you wanted to close on, there are a lot of really great things to celebrate, that educators still show up every day, underpaid, under-resourced, asked to do way too much, and yet they still show up every day to invest in the next generation. And she said, if we just think about that, it gives us great hope.
Mm, perfect. Anything else on your list?
Nope, I've already got a full tattoo sleeve. So
Well, thank you for sharing how Tina impacted you, because I think it's extremely relatable, and I definitely felt like, yeah. And I'm sure listeners will too. So, and thank you to Tina for being who she is in the world and for sharing her time and her wisdom. And we'll see everybody next week.
all right, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Oxygen for Educators. Please like, share, and follow, and if inclined, leave us a 5-star review so that we can keep making content for you. Let us hear from you if you know someone we should interview or a topic we should cover.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the guest and host and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any organization. The content is provided for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended as professional advice. Listeners are encouraged to use their own judgment and seek appropriate professional support when needed. Oxygen for Educators, its host, and production partners are not responsible for any actions taken based on the information shared in this podcast.